Backup policy. So in this video, we'll be discussing some guidelines in creating backup policy. What is a backup policy? A backup policy sets forth the importance of data and system backups, defines the ground rules for planning, executing, and validating backups, and includes specific activities to ensure that critical data is backed up to secure storage media located in a secure location. This ensures that information from business applications such as Oracle, Microsoft SQL, email server databases, and user files is copied to disk and/or tape to ensure data recoverability in the event of accidental data deletion, corrupted information, or a system disruption. The policy's default protection scheme ensures the recoverability of servers, networks, or network components and other infrastructure devices, as well as critical applications, databases, and important files. What should be backup? In practice, data files, databases, utility programs, network software, cybersecurity software, network perimeter softwares like smart firewalls, intrusion detection prevention systems, virtual machines, and just about any software in use should be backed up on a regular schedule. Hardware elements such as servers, switches, routers, and other computing devices must be backed up as well. So this means that we have some sort of reserve servers, switches, and other devices. So most of these devices and their capabilities can be replicated in an alternate location, that is cloud storage, to ensure their rapid recovery if the physical devices have been damaged. Backup types. As noted earlier, the starting point in the policy specifies creation of a full backup and/or images of all relevant software-based systems. A full data backup consists of taking a complete copy of all the data on a particular host or set of hosts. If a data loss event occurs, the more recent the full backup is, the earlier it will be to recover information. For this reason, some IT departments might run full nightly backups. In some larger environments, however, full backups might take more than 24 hours to complete and will consume a lot of tape resources if tape is used. So in practice, data centers typically run full backups over a weekend and then run weekly incremental or differential backups to reduce both the nightly backup window and economize on tape media. Of course, today's high-speed backup protocols and high-capacity storage technologies can easily shrink the window needed for full backups. Backup types. Incremental backups only back up the data that has changed since the last backup job. For example, a Monday incremental backup following a Sunday full backup will only back up the data that has changed since the Sunday full backup was completed. Likewise, Tuesday's incremental backup will only back up the data that changed since completion of Monday's incremental backup. If a full system tape-based data recovery has to be performed on Thursday, it will require loading the Sunday full backup tapes, so yung Sunday, then along with all the incremental backups from Monday through Wednesday to obtain the most recent version of the information. A good practice is to separate unique tapes for each nightly incremental backup job. This ensures some measure of local redundancy if a tape media cartridge happens to be defective or is broken in transport. Differential backups. By contrast, backup all the data that has changed since the last full backup. For example, Wednesday's night differential backup would back up all the data that has changed on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. In the same above recovery scenario, the Sunday full backup tapes along with the Wednesday differential backup tape sets is all that would be required to begin recovering the data. So in the previous one, in an incremental backup, so you need the Sunday full backup, and then you need the Monday incremental backup, Tuesday incremental backup, and the Wednesday incremental backup, so that you can recover the data on, let's say for example, we need it on Thursday. But on differential backup, all you need is the Sunday backup and the Wednesday differential backup. Since the Wednesday differential backup includes the changes in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Pros and cons of backup types. Pros and cons of backup type can be identified for each backup approach. Incremental backups can be completed fairly quickly and only consume a small amount of backup space compared to either full or differential backups. This helps reduce backup windows and cuts down on disk or tape consumption. By contrast, if backups use tape exclusively, in a recovery situation, the process is more complicated and time-consuming because more tapes must be loaded and scanned to process the recovery. The cons associated with tape backup and noted here can be mitigated with the use of high-speed disks, whose costs have been steadily declining over the years, making them very price competitive with tape. Archival storage applications are typically very cost-effective using tape. As described above, differential backups remove some of the recovery burdens that can occur when restoring from an incremental backup. However, if the application environment is often subject to daily data changes, the backup window could become elongated. In addition, differentials will consume more backup resources because each differential backup copy moves and stores all the changed data since the prior full backup. Pros and cons of technology used for backups. Integrating this into a backup architecture is an ideal way to remove some of the complexities from the backup and restore process, especially if data deduplication or dedupe is embedded on the backup disk array. In this instance, there is no practical reason not to designate weekly full and daily incremental backups in a policy. For example, when restoring data from incremental backups saved on disk, it eliminates the need to swap multiple tape cartridges to process the recovery. So it is actually, of course, if it can be what do you call this one, afforded by the company, then we can use this also for backup, or one of the technology that can be used for backup. Types of data loss. Any event that damages or corrupts data can be considered a serious event unless the data is perhaps archival and not likely to be regularly used. Data backup policies should specify data loss situations to be mitigated by backups, although this issue might also be included in a data management policy. Excuse me. If the data is stored on tape, destruction of the tape, magnetic interference, wiping out of data, vandalism, theft, and malicious code embedded on the tape are all situations that can cause data loss. For tape stored on high-speed drives, similar situations, example, physical damage to the disk drive and read-write heads, magnetic interference, and the items noted above can damage or destroy data. Excuse me. A single backup policy should clearly specify all the potential data loss scenarios of concern to IT management and their remedies. Deduplicated backup. An appropriate backup policy backs up data to disk first and then moves data off the tape as it ages. Purpose-built deduplicating disk appliances are ideal disk backup targets because they can be used with several different backup applications. For example, Some applicants support traditional backup applications as well as Oracle Recovery Manager. Most deduplicating backup appliances also support tape-out processes. Most deduplication appliances can efficiently store more than 30 days of backup data on disk, ensuring that end users can perform most recoveries directly from disk data that must be stored for long-term compliance. Example, legal regulatory purposes can then be gradually moved off to tape. So, crafting a reliable backup policy. The purpose of backup policies is to ensure that there is a consistent and reliable method for recovering data, since it is written in black and white. Ad hoc backup policies, such as providing a network file shared to end users to copy their data, can be a potentially risky proposition. So that's the problem with that ad hoc backup policies. So therefore, it's a good practice. A good practice states that information technology should take ownership of backing up all data, or your IT personnel or the IT department. So take ownership of backing up all data. Otherwise, it's possible that critical business data might be lost at some point in time, and regrettably, IT will be held accountable, or the IT department will be held accountable. Issues to consider when crafting backup policy. Number one is the technologies used for backing up, recovering, and restoring data and systems. So what are the technologies? What software? What hardware? Then next to consider is the type of data and systems to be backup. So you should be able to know what are the data to be backup, or what types of data are we going to backup. Network infrastructure requirements to ensure backups can be completed. Professional staff charged with performing backups and recovery. So it should be known who will be in charge in performing backups. Then the emergency procedures if data backups become compromised. So these are things to consider. And then procedures for ensuring that critical data is securely stored in the event of data breach, ransomware attack, or other cybersecurity event. Preliminary activities in crafting backup policy. So number one, you should examine the current IT and other company policies for policy structure and format, and use relevant components for the new policy. So you examine your policies and you also examine other company policies. Then number two is research the internet for examples of data backup and recovery policies and adapt them as appropriate. So there are a lot of resources from the internet. You can research for examples of backup and recovery policies. You can copy and then later on just adapt what is appropriate for your company. Number three, examine software products that can assist in preparing policies. So there are a lot of software that can be used for creating backups. And you should be, as a DBA, you should examine software products. So what are now the components of the data backup and recovery policy? A data backup and recovery policy can be simple. A few paragraphs can be enough for backup and recovery activities, noting the metrics, example, the RPO, discussed previously, so include more granularity if necessary. Following is the basic policy outline that can be formatted to address backup and recovery issues. So your backup and recovery policy first should have the introduction. And the introduction states the fundamental reasons for having a data backup and recovery policy. Then the second part of your policy will be the purpose and scope. Provide details on the policy's purpose and scope. The next, of course, will be the statement of the policy. States the policy in clear, specific terms. The next will be policy leadership. Identifies who is responsible for approving and implementing the policy, as well as issuing penalties for non-compliance. Then next, we have the verification of policy compliance. Describes what's needed, such as gap assessments, audits, performance data, and exercise results, to verify that data backup and recovery activities comply with this policy and any other IT policies. Penalties for non-compliance defines the penalties for failure to comply with policies. Then the last part will be the appendices as needed. So we just place appendices if needed. So this may incorporate added reference data such as list of contracts and service legal agreements.